Hello everyone and Chag Sameach. I'm Rabbi Jeremy Fine, the senior rabbi here at Temple of Aaron in St. Paul, Minnesota. Every year around Simchat Torah, we come together to dance with the Sifrei Torah, to daven next to them, to celebrate and sing. And this year, many of our congregations are not together. So we decided, myself alongside several other clergy from around the country, to still virtually celebrate those Sifrei Torah. You're going to hear stories from around the country of Sifrei Torah in Aron HaKodesh is just like this. You're also going to see music that is lent to us by some of the best Jewish musicians around the country. We hope you enjoy, and though you're not dancing with people, if you feel the need to get up and celebrate, we hope you do that too. Chag Sameach, and I'll see you throughout this video.
Hi, my name is Rabbi Gideon Estes. I'm the rabbi of Congregation Or Ami in Houston, Texas. And we are the home and custodian of the Space Torah. The Space Torah is the first Sefer Torah ever to go into outer space. It was taken aboard the Space Shuttle Columbia by Dr. Jeffrey Hoffman in March of 1996 on his fifth and final space mission. The Torah had to be small, so it was something that was sought out and found to be something that could actually be taken. But one segment, the first leaf of the Torah, was taken with Dr. Hoffman aboard the crew quarters. And when he was flying over Israel on a Shabbat morning, he actually had the opportunity to read from the Torah. And because of the vagaries of scheduling, he chose to read the opening lines of the Torah about God's creation of the heavens and earth, which we also read on this holiday. So it's very fitting that we look towards the Space Torah.
Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. And in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
The really amazing part of this Torah is what Dr. Hoffman said, which is that usually things taken into space are changed by being in space. But the Torah is already so special that instead it changes space. And I really love that image of understanding that when Jews journey to places, we take the Torah along with us. And on this holiday of Simchat Torah, where we celebrate that the Torah is what enlivens and strengthens us, that we can keep coming back to it again and again, the Space Torah help enlivens that. That this Torah, which went out to outer space, then returned safely to Earth, helps embody the fact that Jews carry our values with us no matter where we go. The nice thing about how it's used here at Or Ami is that we use it to inspire all sorts of youth. It's nice that it's used regularly by USYers as they come and visit our synagogue for Kinnusim, and also it's used frequently by B'nai Mitzvah, but it's something that's treasured and loved by everyone in our congregation. The Rimonim on the Space Torah were donated by members of our congregation, Eliana and Hoffman, in honor of the 20th anniversary of the space shuttle flight of the Space Torah. We honor Dr. Hoffman, and they donated this gift in honor of it and reminding the specialness that is the Space Torah. And most recently, marking the completion of 10 years here at Orami, the congregation honored me with a special gift of commissioning a new mantle for the Space Torah in my honor, which touches me deeply and is something really special and helps reflect for me of how honored I am to be the rabbi of the congregation that is the custodian of this very special Sefer Torah.
Folks, thanks for listening to us here. We're Nefesh Mountain again, and my name's Eric. This is my wife, Donnie, but I'm going to introduce these guys who certainly deserve introducing. This is Tim Kaya playing the bass for y'all.
Oh, hi.
And this is Alan Grubner playing the violin. And we're going to close it out for you. This is a song, we introduced this many different ways, but all I'm going to say to you fine folks at Diddy is this is a song here of freedom. And it feels good to play this song. I don't know if it feels good, but I think it's appropriate to play this in beautiful Memphis, Tennessee. The Song of Freedom.
A very special part. Let me hear what you guys say on the guitar. Can you do that one more time? Okay, I got it.
מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, מי כמוך בלב אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות, עושת הלב, נורא תהילות, עושת הלב, עושת הלב, עושת
I'm Cantor Kerith Spencer-Shapiro, and this is the story of the deerskin Torah from University Synagogue in Los Angeles. Or maybe it's the story of the calfskin Torah. I've heard this story a few times, and sometimes it's deer and sometimes calf. I'm thinking about calling it the open-close Torah from now on, and here is its story. Our community once was asked to loan out one of our scrolls to a pop-up synagogue. This was back in the 80s, long before I was a cantor. And the story goes that we loaned our Sefer Torah to the group, and it was promptly returned as promised in its covering and placed back in our ark. But the next time someone took the covering off the Torah, imagine their surprise when they realized it was a different scroll than the one we had loaned out. People from my shul tried to contact the people who had borrowed our scroll, but to no avail. We will never know if it was an intentional swap or a mistake, as the borrowers had vanished without a trace. We later found out that while the scroll we loaned was a kosher scroll, the one returned to us was pasul and not usable for public readings. We're lucky to have 4 kosher scrolls that we read from regularly and a Czech scroll on loan to us that we use on special occasions in addition to the open-closed Torah. So don't worry, we're okay. Whenever I hear this story, it reminds me that we are supposed to build a fence around the Torah. When we hear that phrase, we take it in a metaphorical sense. So that we don't spend money on Shabbat, the rabbis told us also not to touch money on Shabbat. That's an example of building a fence around the Torah. But in the case of our open-closed Torah, we needed to build an actual fence around our Sefer Torah to guard it and to keep it safe. We're coming out of a season when we pondered gates opening and gates closing. We ask God to open the gates of righteousness for us so that we can march right through them. We hurry through the Ne'ilah prayers urgently, working hard to utter each phrase in our machzorim before the gates close and Yom Kippur comes to an end. As we step into Simchat Torah, I think that if this scroll could talk, it would thank us for keeping it with its other Torah friends in the ark, even though they're kosher and it is pasul. And it would tell us to keep pushing the gates open, to let people in, at the same time doing what we can to protect our heritage. This Torah is a paradox. It's like the broken tablets that our ancestors kept in the Holy Ark even after they were destroyed. It's a non-kosher scroll that we keep in our ark to tell us that we need to be open and closed at the same time. And that's the story of the open-close Torah.
Tree
Shalom, I'm Rabbi Rudin Luria. I'm here at B'nai Jeshurun congregation in Pepper Pike, Ohio, in the eastern suburbs of Cleveland. And I want to share the story of this Torah with you. This Torah survived the Holocaust. This Torah is nearly 500 years old. This Torah is considered a superhero Torah. This Torah came to us more than 25 years ago in 1996. But as I said, this Torah is over 400 years old, perhaps 500 years old. This Torah scroll came to us from the Altanoi Shul, the oldest standing synagogue in Europe, in Prague, in the Czech Republic. The synagogue was built in the 1200s, and this Torah was written likely in the 1500s in Prague, just at the time of the rise of the most famous rabbi of the Altanoi Shul, Rabbi Yehuda Loew, known as the Maharal. He was a Torah scholar, and he also was a Jewish mystic. You see, life wasn't easy for Jews in Prague and Europe in the 1500s. There were pogroms, there were attacks against the Jews, there were anti-Semitic incidents. And Rabbi Loew had studied about the mystical ways, the Kabbalistic ways to create a golem, a creature that could protect the Jewish people, to protect his community, to protect his shul. And so, legend has it that Rabbi Loew, the Maharal, collected clay and earth around the city of Prague, and he brought it up to the Torah attic, the closet where all the extra Torahs were kept in the synagogue. And there he took all the clay and he formed out the shape of a body. And using Kabbalistic incantations and spelling the word emet on the forehead as he made the form of a human body, the clay came to life. He breathed life into the clay with the help of Kabbalah and God, and that became the golem. It wasn't a person, it was a creature with superhuman strength. And whenever someone rose up to attack the Jewish community in Prague or to attack the synagogue, legend has it that the golem awoke and that it defended the Jewish people. It protected them. And when the golem wasn't needed, it went into the Altanoi synagogue and it slept in the Torah attic. In that Torah attic, it slept for years. It slept for centuries. It so happens that there were fires in the Jewish ghetto in Prague, but somehow the Altanoi synagogue was never harmed. And years later, during the Holocaust, when the Nazis had entered Prague, and the Nazis came to burn down and destroy the Altanoi synagogue, whether it was fear of the legend of the golem, or perhaps intervention by the golem, the synagogue was never harmed. The synagogue stood. The Nazis used the synagogue to place Jewish ritual items and Torah scrolls that they had stolen, and they warehoused them in the synagogue. That synagogue, after the war, was brought back to life, and it still runs today as a synagogue. And this Torah scroll, we received it from the attic in the Altanoi land shul. It perhaps was resting beside the golem, the superhero that saved the Jewish people. Perhaps this Torah scroll was the place where the golem rested and maybe even laid his head down to sleep, only to be awakened when the Jewish people needed help, needed to be saved. We helped restore and repair this Torah so that it could carry on its legacy here in our synagogue. And you can see the wooden handles are from ages past, surviving the Shoah and so many years. And I'll open for you just a little peek at the scroll. Very worn, very fragile. We only read from this scroll 4 times a year on the holiest days, on Yom Kippur, the end of Sukkot, on Shmini Atzeret, on Pesach, on Passover, and on Shavuot, when we receive the Torah itself. Sewn together with patches. The beautiful script is considered very unique calligraphy, very beautiful writing. And I'm going to chant for you the priestly blessing. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Those words, chanted by Aaron the high priest thousands of years ago, are read here, coming from Prague, coming from the safety of the Golem and the Maharal, the Altanur Shul, here to B'nai Jeshurun and here to you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. This Torah has the center place in our holy ark. We are so proud to carry on its legacy, to repair it and restore it, and to bring it on for generations to come. Chag Sameach. Chag Sameach.
Faith in God, we need faith in ourselves. God helps us get these. See, we're just gonna sing. We're just gonna do it. We'll just see how it goes, and hopefully you will sing and dance as well, because it's late and we need the energy. We need to do that together. All right. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi again, I'm Rabbi Jeremy Fine, Temple of Aaron in St. Paul, Minnesota. While you've heard some nice stories to begin with, some really celebratory stories of Sifrei Torah, not every story is that uplifting. So is the story of the burned Torah. This Sefer Torah was amongst over 1,500 Sifrei Torah that resided in London being cataloged. Its story actually began in Czechoslovakia, where it was saved by the government during the invasion of the Nazis towards the end of World War II. The Sefer Torah was kept in a basement for over 20 years, collecting dust and mildew. In 1963, a London art connoisseur collected all the Sifrei Torah in hopes to repair them. They found themselves in London, in an attic to be repaired. And our own, at Temple of Aaron, Rabbi Newman, spent time repairing the Sifrei Torah while he was in London. The burned Torah actually is a very sad part of the story and how it got burned. It's said that the Nazis used to wrap children in these and burn them together, both the Torah and human being alike. But it is still preserved here in love and devotion and hope. And it resides in our display case always for people to see, for people to understand that we keep going and we keep moving and that people's lives were at stake. But we still love and have a devotion to our people and to God.
Hum, ha,
Hi, I'm Rabbi Noah Farkas from Valley Beth Shalom in Encino, Los Angeles, California. And here is a wonderful Simchat Torah story for children based on the Sifrei Torah that are found in our ark, in our sanctuary. Once upon a time, a few years ago, there was a little boy named Joseph. And Joseph was attending the day school at the congregation, and he realized one day after morning minyan, he left his jacket in the sanctuary on his way to class. So he asked his teacher, "Hey, teacher, can I go back to the sanctuary to get jacket?" And the teacher said, "Fine, that's great." So Joseph turns around and he runs back and he opens the door to the sanctuary, and the lights are all dark. And he walks in and he looks around and it's completely dark. And then he hears a voice. And he says, "Hey, Joseph, come over here, come over here." And he doesn't know where that voice is coming from. He's looking around. He doesn't know where that's coming from. And he looks and he sees the Ner Tamid glowing over the ark. And he looks above and he hears coming out from the ark, "Joseph, come up here, come up here." And Joseph runs up and he looks up at the very big, tall ark with the Ner Tamid and light inside the ark. And he says, "Who's there?" And the voice from inside says, "It's me. It's the Torah." Joseph stands back and is kind of scared. And the Torah says, "Don't be scared, don't be scared. Open the door, open the door." And as he opened the door, the light shines on his face. And Joseph sees 4 Torahs there in the ark and several more above. And Joseph says to the Torah, "How do you know my name?" Well, the Torah says, "Of course I know your name. Your name is Yosef ben Chaim Visara. Yeah, I was there the day you were named, and I was there when your older brother had his bar mitzvah, and I know your parents. I've been there the whole time." He said, "Wow, I have a family. I have parents. I have siblings. I didn't know that I had Torahs." Well, you see, the Torah says we're your family too. We're your family. We're the story of your family. "Really?" says Joseph. "I can't believe that." And then the Torah says, "Yeah, every one of us, every one of these Sifrei Torah are part of your family, and we're all part of the same story, even if our stories are a little different." And Joseph looks over his shoulder, not sure if he should be there or not, and goes to Torah and says, well, what's the story? And the first Torah says, well, it begins very long ago. The Torah he's looking at says, "I'm from Russia, far away in a small town where there were many Jewish people, and they would celebrate weddings and family. Eventually, for one wedding, commissioned a sofer, someone who writes a Torah, to write and scribe, and I was created that way. But then before I could be brought to the synagogue to be paraded around on this very beautiful wedding day, the Russian police came and they told everyone they had to leave. And so as they escaped, the family that had written this Torah shoved me into a suitcase, and it was so tight. But then, like a couple months later, opened me up again, and I was in a new country. I was here in America, and that day that we arrived was July 4th, 1904. I'll always remember it because it was the day we went through Ellis Island and came to America. And Joey says, "Wow, July 4th, that's Independence Day." And then, yeah, said the first Torah, "That's the day we came to America. Thousands of people from every continent, every corner of the world came to New York City, and they took up residence in a small synagogue on the Lower East Side. And then that family eventually decided to move to California, so they brought me with them to California, and that's how I ended up in this ark, and why I hear you and I listen to you and I know your family, because I am a story about how we came to this country and indeed this city." And Joseph was like, "Wow, that's really amazing." And then the second Torah speaks up, very different accent. I'm not good with accents, so I can't really do it. But this Torah looked different than the first. The first was made of cloth, and it had the beautiful wood. This one was made of silver, and it was very, almost like very ornate, with a hard case around it. And it begins to speak. It says, I came to this country too. And Joseph looks up at this new voice in his head, and he's hearing the Torah, and he's like, "Well, where do you come from?" He says, "Well, my family comes from Tehran." comes from Iran, what you would call Persia. We came to this country too. We had a small town, with very cosmopolitan community, and we would gather for the Nei Mitzvah. We would gather for Yom Kippur. We would be held aloft, held very high. And as you can see, I'm totally made of silver. Every inch of me is covered in silver. And every Friday afternoon, a small group of men would come and polish me, make me very shiny for the community. And we would pray. But then when we had to leave, they took me with them, and it wasn't sure I was going to get out. They were very worried that the silver would attract the authorities and that they would try to take the wealth away. So they actually removed the silver from my casing and hid it in different bags. And when we arrived to this country here in Los Angeles, they put me back together. It took almost a whole year, and they brought me to this ark where I get to hang out and be with my brothers and sisters here. And it's quite powerful and quite beautiful. And now I'm here. And Joey, remember, it's like, oh yeah, some of my friends are Persian, and we go to their house for Friday night dinner, and it's a beautiful celebration. And it's so nice to see this other Torah. And then a third Torah speaks up next to it. Smaller one. And it also has a little bit different accent. Its Hebrew is very defined and clear, and as it begins to speak, this Torah says, Joey, I've known your family, I think, the longest. You see, these other two know you from being here and naming you, but I knew your family beforehand because I know your story. I know that from Europe, some of your family went to Eretz Yisrael, and there they fought for Israeli independence. And while you were living on, your great-great-uncle was living on a kibbutz, he fought in the Haganah at the beginning of the war for independence. And unfortunately, the area where he was working and living, we had to retreat. And they brought the Torah with us, and they had to take the Torah out, and they did, and then we decided to come to America after the founding of the state. And I'm going to tell you that I bore witness to the founding of the state of Israel, and I saw swamps drained, I saw cities built, I saw Jewish freedom renewed. Your great-great-uncle died in that war, and his name was Yossi. And you are named for him. And Joseph looks up at him and says, wow, that's so amazing. I knew I was named for Yosef, but I didn't know he was a war hero. Oh, he was. And his family came and brought me here to Los Angeles, and here I'm in the ark. And I'm so happy to be with you, and so happy to finally share that part of the story. Wow, it's really amazing. And then Joey looks over at the fourth Torah, one on the side, and says, each of you speak with different languages and different. This Torah is not saying anything. And silence kind of falls over the ark, and the first Torah speaks up. It says, "Listen, she doesn't speak much. She's very silent, because sometimes when you see something so terrible, you have no words. You see, she comes from Czechoslovakia, and she supported a Jewish community there in the mountains, and when the Nazis came, they locked the community in the shul and tried to burn it down. And one of the wonderful members of the community grabbed her just as she was burning and saved her and brought her to a church, and a very, very kind family hid it in the basement of a church. And she's singed and broken. And after the war, after the Russians freed Czechoslovakia, the church family gave the Torah to a Jewish agency who was willing to bring it to the United States. And our community here was so happy to embrace it. We raised some money and we purchased that Torah and brought it into our sanctuary where she sits. But she doesn't speak much. But then the Torah said, the first Torah said, how you come for minyan a few days a week in the sanctuary? Oh, yes, said Joey. He says, every time that you come and you pray and you learn and you laugh and you bring Jewish life to this space, and when the rabbi opens the ark and we read the Torah together, read from one of us together, she heals just a little bit. Her pages might not ever come back together, but the words inside heal. And she'll find her voice again. We know she will. And at that moment, the teacher calls from the back of the sanctuary, "Joey, what are you doing?" And Joseph looks up at the Torahs and says, "Thank you so much for sharing. That was really amazing. Can I come back and talk again?" And the Torahs all say, in whatever way that they can, "We're always here for you. You can always come talk to us. We're always listening." Because all a Torah really needs is a Jewish person to hold it, to care for it, to read from it, to study it day and night. That's what gives us life, and that's what gives you life too. And so Joseph closes the ark, and as he leaves, he sees his sweater, he picks it up, jacket, runs out, and just before he leaves, he kind of waves to the Torahs in the ark, and the Ner Tamid flickers just a little bit, and then he runs out. So that was the story of our Torahs. And what do we learn from that? That Jews need Torah. It's brought us through every generation and every calamity that we've ever seen. But the Torah needs Jews just as much. That's what it means to cleave to it, to call it Eitz Chaim Hi, that it's a book that gives us life and a book that we give life to it too. Chag Sameach, happy Simchat Torah. It's been so great to share with you. I hope everyone has a chance to find their Torah story on this wonderful holiday. Chag Sameach.
It's Chaim, Hi, Lama, Chazikim, Babeton.
Welcome to Congregation Knesset Israel here in Elgin, Illinois. I'm Rabbi Margaret Frisch Klein, and I want to welcome you on a journey as we celebrate Simchat Torah and Torah scrolls all over the United States and the world together. We here at CKI, Congregation Knesset Israel, have a very unique, special, and historical Torah. I will open the Ark so that we can explore this treasure together. This Sefer Torah is one of 24 Torah scrolls commissioned by Sir Moses Montefiore. It is scroll number 23. We know this because it's inscribed on the Eitzim itself, number 23, and because we have all the documentation from 2 sofers. So come look at how beautiful it is together with me. Go ahead. Look at just how beautiful the katav is, the writing is. We know that this is a Montefiore scroll that we acquired from a congregation in Quincy, Illinois, a congregation B'nai Shalom, when Rabbi Abraham Rose was the rabbi here, and then he was the rabbi there. We have the notary work from Dr. W.J. Buchsweiler in Haifa certifying the fact that this was in fact a Montefiore scroll, and that it's very hard to read the facsimile. We have a fax copy of this, and it's that old-fashioned, dare I say it, fax paper. And we know that the Torah scroll itself dates to before 1888. We did have this scroll out for repair a couple of years ago with Sofer Neil Yerman in New York, and he reports that it's calfskin coated with calcium carbonate on the back. It's natural on the front. It's a generalized Sephardi hybrid with elements of Baghdadi and Ari scripts, mainly based on a Spanish katav. He reports that it's a beautiful scroll written with great kavanah, very thin layer of ink on a dense cloth, which itself is also very strong and flexible and will keep all these scrolls healthy. He did a little bit of repair, again with a great deal of kavanah. We were privileged to have him here. We don't really know how the scroll got from Haifa to Quincy, but we do know that it was the gift. It's very hard to read this fax. That it was, in fact, in the possession of one of the great, let's see if I can read this, granddaughters. That this is Sefer Torah number 23, which his sister-in-law, Ney Buchler, widow of the late brother Herbert Montefiore Corbin, Dr. Phil, inherited it in the presence of Sir Moses as a present of Sir Moses Montefiore, and that it was willed to the late grandfather, Dr. Louis Lowe, who was then the principal of the Montefiore College in Ramsgate. So that gives you pretty much the full story of this very, very special Torah scroll. We hope that our sharing it with you has increased our love of Torah and our celebration of Simchat Torah. May we continue to read from the beginning to the end to the beginning again.
Yeshua, Yisrael, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Well, stand up now, be recognized for all that you've done. Well, get up now, Yisrael, the Lord God is one. It's easier not to do all that God has asked, but that you're who you are, and by that grace you're up for the task. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Well, everywhere I look around, all people want to change. We spread the faith with different paint and in a wider range. There's no joy to cry, why can't we be just like the rest? To them I say there's joy in who you are. Well, stand up now and say Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. So be like Abraham and shake the hand of everyone you meet. But don't forget who you are, people so unique. Hashem revealed himself to you, set your people free. If that was all it done, it'd be enough. But she stayed with you and me, and so Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shana Tova, Chag Sameach. My name's Rabbi Daniel Bar Nahum. I'm the rabbi at Temple B'nai Torah, a Reform congregation in Wantagh, New York, on Long Island. I want to thank Rabbi Fine for inviting me and our congregation's Torah to be a part of this very special traveling around 7 special Torahs around the country. So the Torah that I want to talk about today here at our congregation is a Torah which I think really exemplifies one of the deeper meanings and one of the deeper appreciations that we ought to have for Torah, which is that this is the text and this is the scroll that has united our people no matter where our people may have wandered and where they may have gone. In fact, this scroll that we have here, our Sofer has instructed and taught us that there are no fewer than 4 different hands that went into the writing of this Sefer Torah. There are Eastern European hands, there are Beit Yaakov and Beit Yosef hands, and there are Velish hands, potentially among others. The Sofer also told us that the different pieces that came together to make this Torah came from over a couple of different centuries throughout Europe. The different klafim, the different pages of parchment that were woven together, potentially even from different Torah scrolls from different various communities coming back together to make one whole scroll. A few years ago, when one of our legacy congregations had the opportunity to repair a Torah scroll as an opportunity for everyone to participate in the act of writing a letter in the Torah, this is the scroll that we chose. And we chose this scroll because we understood that just like this scroll, our community comes from a variety of different places. Our community has different backgrounds, different traditions, different dishes that are special for each of the different holidays that we celebrate. But no matter what differences of background, no matter how different our handwriting might be, regardless of where we come from, at our base are always the words of Torah, the same words of Torah that always bring us together. And so this Torah scroll, much like a Jewish community, represents the diversity that exists within Judaism and the diversity that exists within our community, recognizing all of the various places that we've come from and all of the various traditions that we bring with us. The opportunity we had to repair this scroll was truly special and magnificent, and how special it is for us to be able to share that with you today. And so I have the Torah rolled for us here to the very end of the book of Genesis so that we can even see one place in this Sefer Torah where the words continue without break, but it's clear that they were written by two different hands and by two different folks, potentially even at two different times and in two different places. So as you can see on this Torah scroll, we have two different pieces of parchment and two very different handwritings, clearly done by two different folks. You can see the end here, the very end of the book of Genesis, is in a much broader, a much bigger style with some slightly different embellishments and flourishes, compared to the chapter just before it, which is a little bit of a smaller text and a little bit of a finer workmanship. What we have here are the last blessings that Jacob gives to his 12 sons, followed by Jacob's death, and then Joseph's death, and then this hand continues through to the beginning of the book of Exodus, which is marked by this blank space right here. So in these panels, we see at least two of the different hands that go into creating this Torah scroll of our community. So once again, a Chag Sameach to everyone, and thank you so much for including us and this Torah that represents our community, and really all Jewish communities, to be a part of this celebration of Simchat Torah.
Thank you everyone for watching. We hope you enjoyed this new virtual Simchat Torah. Hopefully next year you are all celebrating with our communities, dancing and singing and celebrating those happy moments once again. Wishing everyone a Chag Sameach and enjoy the rest of your holiday.
Die, 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 die.